Old Testament Survey lesson number 8. And we just finished up a study on the tabernacle. Now, still in the book of Exodus, you have a couple of more things I'd like to deal with before we move to Leviticus. And some of that will go real fast because I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. But there are 7 Jewish feasts that are given in the book of Exodus and the book of Leviticus. 7 Jewish feasts. I'm going to give them to you real quick. Number 1 is the Feast of Passover. The Feast of Passover was always on the 14th day. The 14th day of the Jewish month Nisan. And it's found in Leviticus chapter 23. Jesus was crucified on the 14th day. If you remember just a few minutes ago, we read Exodus chapter number 12, and it says you're supposed to take the lamb and hold it till the 14th day. The 14th day is Passover. Jesus died on the 14th day at evening. And he didn't die on Friday. Just while in passing, let me fix that for you. Didn't die on Friday. I know they give us Good Friday, but look, take as many days as you can get off for it. But he didn't die on Friday. The Bible says 3 days and 3 nights. 72 hours. You can't get 72 hours and die Friday evening and be up at 6 o'clock Sunday morning. I don't care where you went to school. It's impossible. That's an old Catholic tradition, and he didn't die on Friday. They call it Good Friday. Well, that's great. But if I told you he died on Wednesday, you might want to write it. You ever wonder why we go to church on Wednesday night? We go to church on Wednesday night, we go to church on Sunday. Died on Wednesday, he rose on Sunday. So why we go on Sunday night? Because they went to church in the evening too. So the disciples were gathered in the upper room at evening time when the doors were shut. And so anyway, that's neither here nor there. The 14th day is Passover. And then what you would have on Passover. Now, man, so many things. In the tabernacle, they would bring a lamb in on the 10th day and hold it till the 14th day. Exodus chapter number 12. Well, do you know what day Jesus rode into Jerusalem on that donkey? He rode into Jerusalem on the 10th day, and he rode through the sheep gate. Why did he ride through the sheep gate? He went through the sheep gate because he was fixing to be, John the Baptist said, "Behold the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sin of the world." And y'all remember when Jesus was arrested? He went before the high priest. You remember that guy I showed you a while ago? He went before the high priest Caiaphas. Caiaphas got so mad at him. He said, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "I am." Caiaphas got up off of his seat and tore his mantle. Well, anytime a high priest tears their clothes, that means they vacated the office. You say, if Caiaphas vacated the office, who took his place? He was looking at him. Jesus Christ was the next high priest that took his place. All of this on the 14th day. Then, on the 15th day, from the 15th to the 21st, is what they call the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The Feast of Unleavened Bread, this is what they would do. They would tell their kids, they use it as a game. The Jews still do this today. After Passover, it's the day after Passover. They'd give their kids flashlights. Well, they didn't have flashlights, but candles. And they would go all through the house and try to find any leaven whatsoever. Any leaven whatsoever, and get it out of the house. The Feast of Unleavened Bread. They would get their yeast, leaven, out of the house. A picture and type of sin. Passover, they roast the lamb. Exodus chapter 12, 15th to the 21st, they get all of that unleavened bread out of their house. Jesus Christ went to the grave the 15th to the 20th, or excuse me, on the 15th day of unleavened bread. You say, Feast of Unleavened Bread, they get all the sin out of the house. All right? You remember when Jesus rode into the Jerusalem on the 10th day. He went to the temple, and does anybody remember what he did? He goes into the temple, and he sees them selling in the temple. He gets a whip. This is Jesus now, not the sweet little baby Jesus you're thinking about Christmas. We're talking about the one that rode in there, got him a whip, turned over the tables, and kicked all of them out of his house. What he was doing what the days of unleavened bread, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, would be, and that is getting all the sin out of his house. And that's what he did when he went in there. He got all the sin out. He cleaned up his house before the days of unleavened bread. Then, on the 18th day, is the Feast of First Fruits. The Feast of First Fruits was all within the same month. You had Passover, unleavened bread, the Feast of First Fruits, all in the same month. On the 18th day, the Feast of First Fruits, they would bring the first of their whatever they did. If they grew wheat, if they did a vineyard, if they had a vineyard, whatever the first crop was. You know, that's why when we bring our tithes into the storehouse and things of that nature, we cut it off first. We give the first fruits. We don't give God what's left over. We give Him off the top, the first fruits. You give Him what's first. A lot of people do it right in reverse. They say, well, I'll give God if I have anything left at the end of the month. But I can tell you this, if you give God His, you won't have to worry about the end of the month. He'll take care of it for you if you'll give Him the first fruits. The first. Don't make God your last resort. Make Him your first. That's called the first fruits. They bring the first fruits of their labor in. Well, Jesus Christ raises from the dead on the 18th day of the Feast of First Fruits. He's the first fruits of the resurrection. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 says that Jesus Christ is the first fruit of the resurrection. Every man in his own order. Christ being the first fruits. And so you got Passover, you got days of unleavened bread, you got first fruits. Then, 50 days. You count 50 days after Passover. On the 50th day, you had what they call the Feast of Pentecost. 50. Penta, that's 50. Pentecost. This is where the Holy Spirit came down on Pentecost. Acts chapter number 2. It was 50 days after Passover. Then, what's the amazing thing about this? Now watch. All of these Jewish feasts, they did in the Old Testament. But I'm laying it out over here, comparing it to Jesus Christ. You got Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, and on the 50th day, you got Pentecost. And then, those are all in the spring months. All in the spring. You won't believe this, but then there's a gap, and there are no feasts until fall. Now, how did they know to leave a gap?
Amen.
Between the spring feast and the fall feast, there's a gap. And then you have the Feast of Trumpets here. You have the Feast of Trumpets. Your Feast of Trumpets is Leviticus 23. Your Feast of Trumpets, what is it?
Rapture.
Pictures the rapture of the church. What's going to happen? The the trump shall sound, the dead in Christ shall rise first, then we which are alive and remain shall be called together in the clouds, meet the Lord in there, so shall we be the Lord, so comfort one another these words, so on and so forth. Feast of Trumpets. When a trumpet sounds, it sounded, certain sound that it would make, would either tell you that we're going to battle, or we're retreating, or we're full force ahead. Well, they're going to sound the trumpet. Probably it'll be Michael the archangel, not Gabriel, Michael the archangel. And he's going to signify to the nation of Israel that they're going into the tribulation. It will signal to us that we're leaving out of here. And that's the Feast of Trumpets. It's in the fall. You say, about the rapture, you think it'll be in the fall? I don't know. I just know the Feast of Trumpets is in the fall months. You got spring feasts, and there's a gap in the summer, and then you got fall. Feast of Trumpets. And then, after your Feast of Trumpets, is your Day of Atonement. The Feast of the Day of Atonement is right here. Remember I told you, this priest, Day of Atonement, he would go in one time, that's the time of the year that he would go. And that represents the second coming, when Jesus Christ was come back, and he would come down into that Holy of Holies. I explained all of that to you. But in the Old Testament, when that high priest would go back there into that Holy of Holies one time a year, and he was put that blood on the mercy seat, the whole place would light up with the glory of God. And in other words, it was almost like the Lord would come and visit for just a few minutes. Well, that's a picture of the second coming, Day of Atonement. Then your last feast, which makes 7, is your Feast of Tabernacles. And that is during the kingdom. You have your Feast of Tabernacles. And the Feast of Tabernacles, they would set up, it's almost like a flea market type thing. They would set up booths, and it had a little tent thing. Anyway, it's hard to explain, but anyway, they still do that today. They still do all of these feasts. The true Orthodox Jew does. There's even a meal. There's a certain meal that you have to do on Passover. It has to be a certain type of meal, a certain type of meat, and all those kind of things. So you got 7 different Jewish feasts, and all of them are laid out just like the end time, with a gap here, and then you got your fall feast, you got your spring feast. It's an amazing thing. Then we're going to finish up here in just a little bit. I'm going to get through right here. The book of Leviticus. Let me rush through this real quick. The book of Leviticus is the book of sacrifice. The book of sacrifice. In Genesis, we see man ruined. Exodus, you see man redeemed. And Leviticus, you see man worshiping. So in Genesis, you'll see man ruined. Exodus, you see man redeemed. And then in Leviticus, it'll tell you how man ought to worship. It'll give you, teaches you how to live a separate life, how to have a clean life. And that's the book of Leviticus. It'll talk about holiness, and it'll give you some stuff about leprosy, guidelines. If a person had leprosy, what you had to do. They'd have to be ousted out of the community, and all those kinds of things. Leviticus gives you all of those to go to, what to do. Let me give you this in Leviticus. In chapter 1, you've got a burnt offering. Chapter 2, you have a meat offering. Chapter 3, you have a peace offering. In chapter 4, you have a sin offering. I'm going to give it to you again. Chapter 1, you have a burnt offering. That's where you would burn an ox, a sheep, a lamb, a turtle dove, some type of goat, whatever. Chapter 2 is a meat offering, corn of wheat, things of that nature. Chapter 3 would be a peace offering. Chapter 4 gives you the sin offering. Now, Glenn over here was asking a question. About what we were talking about, the Day of Atonement. The high priest goes in there one time a year. And his question was, which is a good question, and I told him I'd deal with that here in just a second. He says, so you sin all year long, and this priest goes in on the Day of Atonement and takes care of all the sin one time a year. Well, for a lack of a better explanation, this was the big one. All right? The ones I just told you about were the little ones. In other words, throughout the week when you sin, you would do, it all depends on, Leviticus tells you what type of sin it was. Whether you need a burnt offering, a meat offering, a peace offering, or what was the other one? A sin offering. It all depends on what type of sin it was, which offering you need to bring. And you would do that privately with you and your home and your family. But on that day, that was the big one. You know, that was the one where one time a year they would take all of them. But these little ones you could do throughout the year for you and your family. If that makes sense. Then, the book of Numbers. The book of Numbers is basically just like it says. It's numbering the nation of Israel. I had a picture up there a while ago about the tabernacle, and you saw the nation of Israel. Each tribe had a certain spot in a certain place. They had to line up around the tabernacle, and they were numbered. The book of Numbers gives you that. How many people were in the tribe of Judah? How many people were in the tribe of Nephilim? How many people were in the tribe of Simeon? All that goes. The numbering. Moses tells them to number. Men of war. You'd have packs of 20, packs of 50, packs of 100 over here. And then you'd have a man over these 100, a man over these 50, and a man over these 20. That's numbers. You're numbering the congregation. Numbering the nation of Israel. Getting them in order. And that's basically what the book of Numbers does. Their arrangement in the camp. Numbers, I'm going to give you this in passing. Numbers chapter 6 deals with the vows of a Nazarite. A Nazarite was not to touch any dead animal, any dead carcass at all, period. He was not to cut his hair. He was not to drink any strong drink whatsoever. Wine of any kind. A lot of people say, well, Jesus was a Nazarite. Well, he wasn't a Nazarite. He was a Nazarene from Nazareth. But he never took the Nazarenic vow. John the Baptist was a Nazarite. Samuel was a Nazarite. Samson, y'all remember Samson and his long hair? He was a Nazarite. But Jesus wasn't a Nazarite. You say, how do you know Jesus wasn't a Nazarite? Well, okay. How many dead people did he raise from the dead? Matter of fact, he took one little girl by the hand. Nazarite can't touch a dead body. And so I know Jesus wasn't a Nazarite. Some people say Jesus had long hair. I don't want to get in that conversation. I don't know if he did or not, but I know what 1 Corinthians 11 says. And 1 Corinthians 11 says it's a shame for a man to have long hair. All the pictures you see of Jesus has him with long hair, but who knows what he looks like? That's what people have portrayed him as, or whatever. We don't know what he looked like. Don't know, we know he had a beard, right, Ben? Right, had a beard. And the reason we know that is because on the cross they plucked his beard out. We know he had a beard. And most Jews did. So that's what you'll find in the book of Numbers. Then, the book of Deuteronomy. The book of Deuteronomy Deuteronomy is, what that means is the second writing of the law. Second writing of the law. In other words, he's going to reiterate and give us some more detail of the original law. All right, then you got the book of Joshua. Joshua is the 6th book in the Old Testament. 6 in the Bible is the number of man. And the 6th book in the Old Testament is the first book named after a man. His name's Joshua. After Moses died, Joshua took over. Let me give you this. Joshua is pretty well going to lead the people into the promised land. Does anybody remember why Moses couldn't lead them into the promised land? God told Moses, strike the rock one time. The next time, he told him to speak to it. Well, Moses disobeyed God, and he struck it the second time. When he struck it the second time, he disobeyed God, and it cost him a trip to the Holy Land. Moses did not get to go over to the promised land. That's why when Moses died, Joshua got to take him into the promised land. Because God told Moses, you won't go. I'll let you see over there, but you can't go. Because of disobedience. You say, what's the big deal about striking the rock? Well, striking the rock, you strike it one time. The second time you speak to it, you get the same result as the striking did the first time. All right? Jesus Christ was struck on the cross. Only once. You don't have to strike him again. All you have to do is speak to him the next time, and you get the same result as the striking did the first time.
Right.
Hallelujah. That's pretty good preaching. I'm enjoying my own preaching. And that's what that means. In Genesis, God gave Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob the promise of the Canaan land. Exodus, he delivers his people out of Egyptian bondage so they can head to the promised land. In Leviticus, he gave them the laws to live by. In Numbers, he kept the record of the journey and numbered all the tribes and what all. And then Deuteronomy describes the final preparations before entering the land. And then Joshua picks up the story and carries them on into the promised land. Y'all remember Moses' symbol was a rod. Joshua's symbol was a spear. It's because when you go into the promised land, you're going to have to fight. When you got saved, how many of y'all ever heard this? Just because you get saved don't mean everything becomes a bed of roses. Once you get saved, it's a fight. Because before you got saved, the devil didn't fight you. He already had you. So he didn't fight you. There wasn't no need. He already got you. But when he lost you to Jesus Christ, and the day after you get saved, he's going to put up a fight.
Right.
He's upset. And that's why so many people get confused about being a Christian. Some people say, man, it was a whole lot easier being lost. Yeah, you was on the wrong team. But once you get saved, man, you've got a fight going on your hands. And that's what the promised land is all about. When Joshua leads them people in the nation of Israel, what are they facing? Facing giants. And they have to go in and conquer them. Every one of us, every morning when we get up, we got a giant we have to conquer. And a lot of times we don't cut the head off. And if you don't cut the head off of the giant, that thing will raise back up. Goliath had 4 brothers. I can't say the name of one of his brothers, but one of his brothers, Ishmael or something like that. Sort of like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or something. Hakeem Olajuwon or some Muslim type name. Rose up and tried to attack David later on in life, which is a story that you don't hear much about. You hear the famous story about David and Goliath. But because David didn't kill the other brothers, They came after him later on in life. You're going to have to kill them giants. They will rise up and get you. It doesn't mean you're not saved. It doesn't mean you're not a Christian. It doesn't mean you're a failure. But it does mean you've got to fight. And you've got to fight with a sword, wherever my sword went. And that's all about the Christian life. Every day. It's a battle. It's a battle. It's not a bed of roses. It's a battle every day to fight and to stay on target. All right. There you got Joshua. Joshua was a type of Jesus Christ. You ever thought about this? Joshua, type of Jesus Christ. Moses was a type of a lawgiver. And what Moses couldn't do, Joshua had to come along and do. That's pretty good. Moses couldn't do it because the law can't save him. But Jesus had to come along and finish the job. So Joshua is a type of Jesus Christ. Let me give you this before we go. In the book of Joshua, all right, Moses led the people of Israel across the Red Sea. Parted the water. God says, Moses, throw your rod up there. Moses threw the rod up in there, and the Red Sea parted. They walked across on dry ground. 40 years later, Joshua chapter 2. They're at the bank of the Jordan, and they're fixing to go over to the Promised Land. And before God parts the water, He says, I want to see your feet in the water. And then I'll part. Well, now, the first time, God does everything. That's a picture of salvation. You don't have to do nothing to get saved. But the next time, God ain't going to spoon feed you. If you want victory, if you want to get over in the Promised Land, you've got to get your feet wet. And then He'll part it for you. God does salvation. He does everything 100% for you. But now sometimes, after salvation, He wants to see you get up out of your lazy self and do something before He does something. Hallelujah on that one. People, after they get saved, they just sit back and go, all right, Lord, I'm going to sit back in this recliner, and you tell me what I need to know. God says, no, get your hind end up, and let me see you do something, and then I'll bless you. Is that pretty good?
It's kind of out of bondage, that's salvation.
Yes.
The wilderness is just fumbling through life.
Yes.
And then Canaan is.
It's a victorious Christian life. Defeat your giants. And when you learn how to defeat your giants, you can live in the land of flowing with milk and honey and live a victorious Christian life. It has really nothing to do with heaven at all. People say it does, but it doesn't. It's not a picture of heaven at all. Anyway. Parts of the water there for Joshua. They go across into the wilderness. They go and they find giants. Then you got to look at Judges. We're finding a closing spot now, so y'all hang with me for a second. The book of Judges. You've got about 12 or 13 of those judges. And I may give them to you next week. I know you're tired. I am tired. My mind is about... I wanted to get through Ruth, which is the next book, but I can't do it. The book of Judges. And I'll start with this next week because what's going to happen in the book of Judges, they get into the land. And all right, here's what happens. I'll give you the short version. I'll give you the long version next Tuesday night. Here's the short version. God told them when you go into the land, and you fight the Midianites, the Amorites, the Canaanites. When you fight them, now listen to this real good. He says, when you go in there, now y'all not ready for this one. Y'all not ready for this one. He says, wipe them all out.
Yep.
Kids and all. Why? Because you don't want them rising up, coming back to get you. So when you go in, clean house. Kill the animals, everything. The nation of Israel didn't do it. They went in, whooped them in a battle, and they said, let's be friends. You can't be friends with the world. They'll stick up behind you and get you. You better wipe the whole thing out.
Right.
And while I'm on this subject, I'm going to say that on camera. But that's the only way you're going to deal with the Muslim nation.
Right. What happened in Iraq?
You got to go in, and you can't do like you did in Iraq and go over there. This is what perfect example. Iraq, perfect example. We went over there, we won a battle or two, and then we stuck out our hand and said, be friends. Can't do it. You say, I ain't Christian, because it's Bible. So that's harsh. I don't care. It's time somebody said something. You can't be friends with everybody.
Right.
That concludes lesson number 8.